Day 565, Thursday, January 9th. 2 Kings 22, 3-20, and 2 Chronicles 34, 8-28. 2 Kings 22, 3-20 NKJV. Now it came to pass in the 18th sent Shaphan the scribe, the son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam, to the house of the Lord, saying, Go up to Hilkiah the high priest, that he may count the money which has been brought into the house of the Lord, which the doorkeepers have gathered from the people, and let them deliver it into the hand of those doing the work, who are the overseers in the house of the Lord. Let them give it to those who are in the house of the Lord doing the work, to repair the damages of the house, to carpenters and builders and masons, and to buy timber and hewn stone to repair the house. However, there need be no accounting made with them of the money delivered into their hand, because they deal faithfully. Then Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. So Shaphan the scribe went to the king, bringing the king word, saying, Your servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of those who do the work, who oversee the house of the Lord. Then Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. Now it happened, when the king heard the words of the book of the law, that he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Achbor the son of Micaiah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah a servant of the king, saying, Go, inquire of the Lord for me, for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is aroused against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book, to do according to all that is written concerning us. So Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, Achbor, Shaphan, and Asaiah went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum the son of Tikvah, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. She dwelt in Jerusalem in the 2nd quarter, and they spoke with her. Then she said to them, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, Tell the man who sent you to me, Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will bring calamity on this place and on its inhabitants, all the words of the book which the king of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be aroused against this place, and shall not be quenched. But as for the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, in this manner you shall speak to him. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, concerning the words which you have heard, because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before the Lord, when you heard what I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they would become a desolation and a curse, and you tore your clothes and wept before me. I also have heard you, says the Lord. Surely therefore I will gather you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your grave in peace, and your eyes shall not see all the calamity which I will bring on this place. So they brought back word to the king. 2 Chronicles 34, 8-28 NKJV. In the 18th year of his reign, when he had purged the land and the temple, he sent Shaphan the son of Azaliah, Maaseiah the governor of the city, and Joah the son of Joahaz the recorder, to repair the house of the Lord his God. When they came to Hilkiah the high priest, they delivered the money that was brought into the house of God, which the Levites who kept the doors had gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, from all the remnant of Israel, from all Judah and Benjamin, and which they had brought back to Jerusalem. Then they put it in the hand of the foreman who had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they gave it to the workmen who worked in the house of the Lord, to repair and restore the house. They gave it to the craftsmen and builders to buy hewn stone and timber for beams and to floor the houses which the kings of Judah had destroyed. And the men did the work faithfully. Their overseers were Jahath and Obadiah the Levites, of the sons of Merari, and Zechariah and Meshullam, of the sons of the Kohathites, to supervise. Others of the Levites, all of whom were skillful with instruments of music, were over the burden bearers, and were overseers of all who did work in any kind of service. And some of the Levites were scribes, officers, and gatekeepers. Now when they brought out the money that was brought into the house of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord given by Moses. Then Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan. So Shaphan carried the book to the king, bringing the king word, saying, All that was committed to your servants they are doing. And they have gathered the money that was found in the house of the Lord, and have delivered it into the hand of the overseers and the workmen. Then Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. Thus it happened, when the king heard the words of the law, that he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Abdon the son of Micah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah a servant of the king, saying, Go, inquire of the Lord for me, and for those who are left in Israel and Judah, concerning the words of the book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is poured out on us, because our fathers have not kept the word of the Lord, to do according to all that is written in this book. So Hilkiah and those the king had appointed went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tokath, the son of Hasrah, keeper of the wardrobe. She dwelt in Jerusalem in the 2nd quarter, and they spoke to her to that effect. Then she answered them, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, Tell the man who sent you to me, Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will bring calamity on this place and on its inhabitants, all the curses that are written in the book which they have read before the king of Judah, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath will be poured out on this place and not be quenched. But as for the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, in this manner you shall speak to him. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, concerning the words which you have heard, because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place, and against its inhabitants. And you humbled yourself before me, and you tore your clothes and wept before me. I also have heard you, says the Lord. Surely I will gather you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your grave in peace, and your eyes shall not see all the calamity which I will bring on this place and its inhabitants. So they brought back word to the king. Daily Deep Dive. The UCG reading plan states, around 622 BC, 6 years after commencing his purge of paganism from the land, King Josiah began his restoration of the temple, putting the final seal on his plan to restore the true worship of the true God. The writer of Chronicles mentions 2 men who made up the king's commission who are not mentioned in Kings, Messiah the city governor, and Joah, the son of Joahaz the recorder. Josiah's choice of Shaphan to head the royal commission was a wise one, for his godly influence was to be felt not only in his own time but in that of his sons Ahikam, Jeremiah 6:24, Elasah, Jeremiah 29:3, and Gemariah, Jeremiah 36:10-25, and his grandson Gedaliah, Jeremiah 9:14. The Expositor's Bible Commentary footnote on 2 Kings 22. The people were asked to contribute to the restoration, and as had happened under the rule of Joash 2 Kings 12:15, no audit was required. Josiah's appointments proved their loyalty in carrying out God's work. In the process of restoring the temple, the high priest Hilkiah found the book of the law. Various ideas have been put forward about what the book was and why it was lost. The Expositor's Bible Commentary notes, it is later called the Book of the Covenant v. 30, which suggests Exodus 19:24 cf. To Chesel the Second Sanctuary, suggests Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, and the ensuing stress on the central sanctuary, 2 Kings 23, 8-9 implies Deuteronomy 12 etc. The book, thus, was at least the book of Deuteronomy, that is, according to this source. It is called the Covenant in Dot, for example. It contains the curses Dot, and it alone calls for a central sanctuary and was stored at the temple usually by the side of the ark Dot, 25-26. Note on 2 Chronicles 4:14. Some, however, believe the book of the law to refer to the entire law or Pentateuch, that is, the 5 books of Moses. Oddly enough, Joshua is said to have written about the Israelites' recommitment to God late in his life in the book of the law of God, Joshua 4:26, well after Moses had written the Pentateuch. So it is not entirely certain what all is meant. Continuing in Expositors, the book, however, seems to have become misplaced during the apostate administrations of the previous kings, Manasseh and Amon, under whom the ark had been moved about 2 Chronicles 35:3. Same note. In his book Kingdom of Priests, A History of Old Testament Israel, Eugene Merrill comments, it is not possible to enter into the debate about the precise contents of the scroll found by Hilkiah. It clearly consisted of at least Deuteronomy, and likely the entire Pentateuch, for some of the policies which Josiah proceeded to implement presuppose the teachings of Moses. A more baffling question is, how could the Torah have been lost for decades, not to be recovered until 622, and even then only by accident? Liberal scholarship argues that the document in question was the Book of Deuteronomy, and that it had never been lost at all. It was rather a piece composed recently by a prophetic circle interested in bringing about reform. In order to give it canonical authority, it was attributed to Moses. It may in fact have drawn upon authentic Mosaic tradition. In any case, it was not a product of the hand of Moses but of anonymous scribes of the 7th century. Perhaps, it is proposed, it was drafted by an underground movement in the days of Manasseh and placed in the temple in the hope that it might be found and might inspire Manasseh to seek after Yahweh. It was not discovered in his day, however, and only by chance finally surfaced in 622. This reconstruction disregards universal Jewish tradition about the authorship of Deuteronomy and also fails to explain how it is, Possible that no one in Josiah's time, including the priests and scribes, questioned the alleged Mosaic authorship of a document about which there was, supposedly, not one shred of tradition. Moreover, those aspects of Josiah's reformation which appear to be based uniquely on the teaching of Deuteronomy are attested to in Israel's religious life long before Josiah. The critic must concede that the major prescriptions of Deuteronomy were known long before the discovery of the scroll in the temple. This being so, is it really incredible that Deuteronomy had long existed and had simply been suppressed until its providential discovery by Hilkiah? In the era of the printing press and the dissemination of the printed page in multiplied millions of copies, it is difficult to appreciate the scarcity of written texts in the ancient world. But even some of the most important works composed on durable clay tablets are known only in single copies, despite the recovery of some of the great libraries of the ancient past. What then must be said of those Old Testament writings which were penned on fragile and perishable materials such as papyrus, leather, and parchment? Furthermore, it is most unlikely that the scriptures at any time in Old Testament Israel existed in more than a few dozen copies at the very most. Unless scrupulous care were taken to preserve them, they would be subject to the ravages of war and natural disaster, or simply disintegrate with time. There is no reason then why a diabolical despotic ruler such as Manasseh could not have seized virtually all the copies of the Torah and destroyed them in order to advance his own apostate ends. Somehow in the providence of God, a pious priest or scribe managed to safeguard a copy in a hiding place in the temple, and prayed that it might not perish until it could once more take its position as the bedrock of Israel's life. This undoubtedly is what happened. 1987, pp. 444-445. Realizing the newfound book was very likely of God, and that his instructions had been flouted by the nation, Josiah was grief-stricken. The tearing of clothes was an expression of extreme grief during biblical times. Compare Genesis 37:29, Genesis 4:13, 1 Samuel 4:12, Sus 4:37-26. But God requires more than just an outward show of grief. He wants the same tender heart that Josiah had. See Joel 2:12-14. Josiah set up a delegation to seek God's will. The delegation, headed by Hilkiah, went to Huldah the prophetess, a common practice in the Old Testament. See 1 Kings 22:5-12, 1 Samuel 23:2. There have been a number of prophetesses in the Bible, including Miriam Exodus 15:20, Isaiah's wife Isaiah 8:1-4, 18, Deborah Judges 4-5, and Anna Luke 2:36-38. There were also false women prophets, such as Noadiah in Nehemiah, and those prophetesses in Ezekiel 17, but they were rebuked not because they were women or because they prophesied. Instead, they were rebuked because what they said was false and not a revelation from God. Women were not chattel to be ordered about and used as men pleased in the Old Testament, ranking slightly above a man's ox or donkey. They were fellow heirs of the image of God, charged with tasks that exhibited the originality, independence, and management ability of the woman of valor in Proverbs 31, and were called to enter holistically into sharing all of the joys and labors of life. Walter Kaiser, Jr., Toward Old Testament Ethics, p. It should, though, be pointed out that the New Testament makes it clear that women are not to be ordained as elders or preach during worship services. The second quarter of Jerusalem, 2 Kings 22:14, most likely refers to one of two districts referred to in Nehemiah 3:912 and Zephaniah 1:10. Although the location isn't certain, it was most likely in the commercial area, and indicates that Huldah and her husband lived in poor circumstances. A puzzling question to some is why Josiah's delegation went to a prophetess rather than the more well-known prophets of the time, such as Jeremiah and Zephaniah. It could simply be that they weren't so well known at the time, or perhaps they were then preaching in another part of Judah. In any event, they were not needed for the task. Huldah was truly a prophetess of God. She sent two messages back, one to the man who sent them to her and the other to Josiah, a message of condemnation for Judah, but of peace for the king. Some have wondered why Josiah soon died in battle when God had promised him peace. We will take up this question when we read later of the king's death. End.